Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Giro podcast. I hope wherever you are, you're all well. We've done a few podcasts this year, so encourage you to go back and have a listen to them. The last one was great with Frendo of Hot Chili. Really good insight into sort of being a founder and sort of pioneer of cycling sort of culture and groups in the UK. Really cool guy. Go definitely have a listen. But enough of the past, on to the future. Sat with good friend Nick Frendo. Hello.
Afternoon.
How are we doing?
Yeah, right. Good.
Good. Well, we did a podcast together nearly 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Which is mad. So we've got lots to catch up on, which we'll get into. But essentially, before we kind of get into that, I mean, basically, we'll probably set the scene for the listeners out there. Next week, starting on Monday, is Mental Health Awareness Week, which I'm sure you are well aware of. But Nick and his sort of group that he's organised called Ascnd, which is a phenomenal organisation. Nick is really a mental health advocate and has been championing mental health, especially using cycling as a vessel for a number of years now, which we'll kind of get into. But the Mental Health Awareness Week is essentially an annual event, which is basically raising awareness of mental health and hopefully, raising awareness of, how we can all work together to achieve good mental health for everybody. I mean, the last podcast we did together, Nick, you were sharing some, amazing, very sad and shocking statistics about the number of suicides that we see in the UK each day. How it's the biggest killer of men under 40. Is that correct?
Yep.
These are things that, are really shameful in many ways because we have. Never before in our life have we've got more access to things that we can communicate with, but yet for some reason communication is at an all-time low. And the work that you're doing is amazing. So maybe just go into a little bit more from your standpoint about what next week, the Mental Health Awareness Week, what that sort of means to you.
So for me, one of the biggest problems. I mean, if I talk about my personal experiences as a 47-year-old man. I guess I was kind of brought up to appear to be a certain way.
Yeah.
Being vulnerable was not something that you wanted to show. So when you're struggling and you've got issues, the last thing you do would speak to anyone.
Yeah.
Friends, family, or these are my experiences. So for me, I didn't know where to look. I didn't know where to turn. Didn't know how to talk to people. And I wouldn't have known how to communicate with someone that wanted to talk with me either.
Yeah.
And what that leads to is just this sense of isolation and loneliness.
Yeah.
And actually, the theme of Mental Health Awareness Week, I'm going to say this week because that's when this will come out.
Yeah, sure.
Is loneliness.
Yeah.
And it's something that I've experienced. I've brought upon myself because I didn't know how to talk to people.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I want to shout about next week, this week, whatever week.
Yeah, so that's right. Yeah, you raise a very good point there, Nick. So this is coming out on Monday, which is the beginning of Mental Health Awareness Week. So the Mental Health Awareness Week starts on the May the 9th or May the 8th.
9th to 16th.
Yeah, 9th to 16th. So, I mean, it's amazing, especially after the back of the last 2 years where we've kind of gone through like a lockdown. And you and I spoke after the initial lockdown, but we still had more to go through, which we didn't know at the time. That was, August 2020, you and I last sat down and did a podcast. Yeah,
and I guess we thought that, not that it was all over, but I think we touched on it previously was, that first lockdown.
Yeah.
Everything was new to everyone.
Yeah.
And as someone who spent their life trying to isolate themselves, I got to be honest, I felt like a bit of a rock star. I could deal with it. I was like, I've got this down. I know exactly how to deal with isolation. I mean, I didn't. But I think what it actually ended up doing was highlighting, everyone was touched by it.
Yeah.
We didn't have the face-to-face communication that we used to having. So I think on some level in the last 2 years, everyone would have been touched by this, and everyone would be able to be, would relate to it a lot better now than maybe prior to that.
And it was interesting because, I mean, if you sort of think back to it, I mean, we were, we spoke in August, and I'm just thinking in relation to the cafe, because obviously the first few months from that March, April of 2020, we had to shut for a couple of months, and then everything was starting to kind of get back in. And first it was takeaways, and then by the time that you and I sat down, people could sit in, and it felt as though it was quote unquote drawing to an end. But that first lockdown, there was an element of, it was very shocking. There was an element of, yeah, you're right, this is new, we'll get through this. Also, the weather was great.
Oh, it's amazing. Yeah.
It wasn't too bad. Fast forward to later that year, where the lockdown happened over Christmas, and that was the end of December, early January through to like March time.
Yeah.
And it was a very strict lockdown in the coldest, darkest time of the year. And that was where it really hit home, I think, for a lot of people, and people who were maybe susceptible to sort of loneliness, who didn't have a strong group around them. That was just a real sort of punishing blow, and not being able to see family and loved ones for Christmas, all of that. And so, look, thankfully some of the work that you've done and were doing and paving the way for, I think really, paid dividends during that time, that a lot of people felt they had the support. And at least, even if it's a percentage of, people were able to find the right avenues to talk through and discuss their feelings of loneliness. And, it seems like now more time than ever, how important that is.
Yeah, and I think also, I've learned a lot about myself in the last...
Absolutely.
18 months.
Yeah.
And even every now and then when I kind of have a second to sit back and reflect, I've had some really good times in this period, and I've had some pretty horrific ones. And that included, I wasn't going to go here, but it included I'm going to struggle with this, but it included a phone call to Samaritans. And there's a positive in there. I'd learned that I had that opportunity.
Yeah.
And I went out for a ride one day, and I was in a really bad way.
Yeah.
And I just sat down and I made a phone call.
Yeah.
And I think if I hadn't had the experiences that I had in the previous 2 or 3 years, I wouldn't have thought to make that call.
Yeah.
And I don't know what would have happened.
Yeah.
And that's probably going back to, that would have been that November. And I learned so much in that 2 or 3 year period.
Yeah.
Of, honestly, I still have my ups and downs, but had that happened maybe a year or two before, I don't think I made that call.
Yeah.
And I don't know what would have happened.
Yeah.
So just making myself more aware.
Yeah.
And also some of the people that I'd spoken to about their experiences, 2 or 3 of them had told me about, the work that Samaritans do, for example.
Yeah.
And it was in my brain somewhere, and I knew what to do.
Yeah.
And it kind of feels like with everything that I do, if I can just sow this earworm in someone's head.
Yeah.
So whether it's, Samaritans or the New Normal charity or various other services, help, if I can just sow that in someone's head, and the time when they need it, it's there. That's kind of what I want to do.
And look, I commend you for talking about it, and which is so ironic, to sort of talk about. And I appreciate your honesty. I appreciate your openness, because I think look, you and I have had this conversation a number of times. I think there is so much hot air that is put around, especially on social media, where it's maybe intentionally, maybe unintentionally, but it becomes, look at all the work that I'm doing. Look how sort of like great it is.
Yeah.
And, you know, I've always treaded very carefully and skeptically around some of those things and try and avoid the hype. But I think the way that you continue to sort of share your struggles and where opportunities you can be like genuinely real and open to say, like, even though I'm a mental health advocate, I still am aware of my struggles and I still had to make that call. And at least you're doing something. And I think that's the important thing. And you're right, even if it's just for that one person that understands through all the posts that you do, for all the jerseys that you sell, for all of the, you know, whatever, all the rides that you put on, if it's just that one person, then all that effort, all that sort of struggle, all the slot that you have to go through is worth it. And I think that's amazing. And I think that's, and you know, we will come into some of the things that we're sort of going to be, you know, going over in the next couple of weeks. But this is not, for some people, and, you know, this is a matter of life and death. And that is as honest as, you know, we can be about this. And it's not, even though there is some, you know, nice photos that you put on Instagram and some great videos that are really well made and it's all exciting, this comes down to people in their darkest moments having the opportunity and the knowledge and the information to know where to turn to. And that could be to a friend, that could be to Samaritans, as you found out, or whatever that is. And then also equipping people with the tools to understand how to register and see some of those like struggle signs.
Yeah, I mean, I think another takeaway from me over the last couple of years. So lots and lots of friends tried to help me.
Yeah.
And lots of friends have, you know, tried really, really hard. But they've maybe not been equipped to be able to ask the right sort of questions.
Yes.
It's difficult.
Yes.
And, you know, you can quite easily trigger someone by just saying the wrong thing, thinking you're helping.
Yeah.
So, you know, I've got the two goals I've got are, A, reach more people and give them as many signposts to as many different services and resources as possible. But also the flip side of that is let's try and equip people who want to help.
Yeah. Yes.
You know, learning how to talk to someone, learning how to communicate, learning what not to say and what to say. These are the two things that are really important to me now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, so far, mate, it's working, which is great. And, you know, there are a few people that are standing up over the course of time as well and continuing to go. I mean, you've built a platform with Ascend that is having a really big impact. And you've got people that are partnering with you and people that are, you know, really wanting to sort of get behind you because what you're saying is on point. It's correct. It's real because it's your journey as well. And it is having a big impact. So I just think, you know, I think what you're doing is great, mate.
So something you said just a couple of seconds ago about saving lives. So we're going to be working with a brand who, I won't say what product they're doing or what they do, but, you know, one of the strap lines is we're in the business of saving lives. And they're a cycling brand.
Yeah.
When I sat down and thought about it, I was like, so are we. You know, it's exactly what we want to do.
Yeah.
And you guys deal with the physical side. If we can deal with the mental side, bring it all together, you know, that's incredible.
Yeah, that's amazing. Speaking of brands that you're partnering with, and this is not an ad, but we're both thirsty. We've got a couple of bottles of Lucky Saint here, which is a really great company. If you ever get the chance to come across them, here's one for you, mate.
Cheers, mate.
Getting a bit parched, mate. Cheers, pal.
Cheers.
So let's obviously, so next week, Mental Health Week. Let's just talk briefly about Ascend, because even though we spoke about that 2 years ago, I think that from sort of my standpoint as an outsider looking in, I think that Ascend's been through a really great development journey. So let's maybe just talk a little bit about what Ascend is. I mean, I was having a look on your website earlier, and it's nice just to kind of just touch base and, you know, to kind of see the journey that you've kind of been on. And the tagline is, you know, the road to respair. And at the bottom of the page, it says respair. Old English Dictionary has respair, both as a noun and verb, meaning the return to hope after a period of despair.
Thanks, Susie Dent, for that one.
Yeah, on your Susie. I mean, that's really powerful. Hope after despair. I mean, that is, who doesn't want that? You know what I mean? In any form of life, hope after despair. And I think that really also just highlights the significance of the work that you're trying to do and the area that you're in, because you are dealing with people who are in, some people can have despair over, you know, a broken nail. You know, I say that, you know, sort of, you know, with a bit of jest. But some people, you know, their moment of despair is the darkest. And, you know, where they're questioning.
You can see no way out.
Yeah, exactly, no way out. And, you know, we've had friends of the cafe who, as we've spoken about in the past, who have, you know, thought there was no way out and taken action of it. You know, you've shared of your own journey of thinking there was no way out. And thankfully, you know, you're still here to talk about it and doing great things. But that hope is the really important bit there. It's the hope after despair, and it's shining a light on, well, shining a light in darkness, really. So, I mean, you know, Ascend's been going for a few years now, so maybe just talk about what's been happening with Ascend over the last couple of years, some of the developments that have happened, and some of the things you've been doing, and maybe some of the plans coming up this year.
So, I mean, I listened to the previous part. I listened to it regularly, actually, funny enough, over the last few weeks, just to try and think, to look back and go, you know, where did I start? What were the ideas, and where am I now?
Yeah. It's our podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. Yeah.
Season 1.
Season 1. That's right. I was like maybe season 2. Yeah. It'd be like yeah.
And there's a couple of points that I touched on where I didn't really know. It was just an idea.
Yeah.
You know, at some point I wanted to deliver mental health services. I didn't know what. I didn't know how.
Yeah.
I wanted to build communities. I wanted to help people, and I wanted to signpost resources and help however I could. It largely boils down to the relationship between cycling and mental health is a really, really, for some people, it's really, really strong.
Yeah.
And the way that it can enable conversations and sort of break down those barriers. You know, if you're sat across the table with someone, it can be quite intimidating. Even if it's your best friend, like looking someone in the eye can be daunting if you're struggling.
Yeah.
Whereas when you're riding side by side, if you're wearing your sunglasses and, you know, you feel it just feels more comfortable.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's kind of gone on this journey of signposting resources, building communities, and telling stories. So the most powerful thing that I think the website does is initially it sort of started with me using it as a vehicle to, I guess, tell my stories and how I was feeling and what I was doing. And it was very much my thing, and just a blog.
Yeah.
And then over time, it kind of grew, and more people were approaching me saying, you know, I like what you've done. Can I share my story?
Yeah.
And we've had. I mean, I kind of started out in just looking at men's mental health and suicide prevention. Excuse me. And it's kind of gone on now, and we've got, you know, we're people discussing different topics. We've had body dysmorphia, hypersensitivity. There's still people talking about anxiety, depression.
Yeah.
And it's not just, you know, middle-aged men like me. There's young women. There's older men. There's some really, really powerful stories. And at the heart of everything that I'm trying to do with Ascend, it's those stories. And trying to get people to relate to it, and show that you're not on your own. Whatever you're going through, there is someone else going through exactly the same thing.
Definitely.
They may not have found the answer, they may not have the answer, but you know, just as long as you know you're not alone, that can help. And if we can signpost to whatever resources we can, then that's what Ascend is all about.
And I think you've done that really well in that you've offered that platform for people to speak about their journeys, their struggles, their trials.
Yep.
And I think not only is that a wonderful mechanism for them to get out, maybe for the first time, what they're going through, but then the added response of people going, yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I didn't realize there was anybody else or even just that encouragement of you're not alone. But it started with you building that platform. And I mean, let's face it, mate, it started with you actually taking that step to get vulnerable yourself in a very public manner, in the hope that you can use our cycling community as a way of raising awareness of it. And it's amazing how many other people and how many other people's journey stories have come through the woodwork, and you've allowed them and given them the opportunity to speak.
Yeah, it's been incredible. I mean, I went through a period at probably the start of this year where I probably could have done 2 journal entries a week.
Yeah.
And, when it started, I was doing one, I might write something once every 6 weeks.
Yeah.
But we just had this period where we were getting so many people submit their stories. It was incredible. And I really, really wanted to focus on that. And I guess, I still feel like it whenever I put something, whether it's on social media or on the website.
Yeah.
I still feel like it's a huge relief when I do it.
Yeah.
Just because I've got it off my chest I've told someone.
Yeah.
And I get that response from everyone. Whenever they write something, they're always very, most people are quite nervous about putting it out there. And some people, they haven't told friends, family or anyone. And they're like, this is me putting it out there.
Yeah.
And it's been great. It's been incredible. So,
it's funny, isn't it? I mean, 'cause I know it's a sort of very common sort of topic of conversation at the minute, but we do live in a world where and it's not the only factor, but where social media is sort of plays a really big part in our lives. Whether we like it or hate it, it does. And for people who are active on social media, I mean, I'm no longer on it because I just realised it wasn't doing me personally any good. But it's kind of indirectly teaching us to only sort of put out there the best version of yourself. I mean, I'm speaking very generally here, but I think whilst that's good, I think it really kind of can mask what's really going on under the surface, and you can fall into the trap of, and look, this has been going on before social media, but maybe I would suggest that it's just enhancing it, where you'll put forward the way that you think you need to be. And you said this at the beginning, well, you're supposed to just crack on and be strong, and that can be through social guidance, that can be through parental guidance, who knows. But there's something that I'm trying to journey with more and more, and it's just the whole thing of just like pure honesty.
Yeah.
And that's the best place that you can be. Good, bad, it doesn't matter. Like just being in that position, and that takes a lot of time, takes a lot of courage, it takes a lot of trials. But actually just getting to that place where this is me, warts and all.
Yeah.
And I think the more conversation that we can have to champion that, because that's the safest place for you to be as well, where you are yourself. You are able to say, this is me, this is who I am. Because watch the people that will just flood around you. Watch the people, when you let down those barriers, watch the people that go, I'm here for you, or me too, and that encouragement and that opportunity to kind of uplift. And, you mentioned earlier, you feel that you are playing a part of building communities. Community is everything, and what is community? It's that real connection of people. But in order for that to happen on a real level, there just has to be that level of honesty and truth, because you can't build a lasting community on. I was going to say on lies, but I don't mean that. On sort of
just this veneer of
presenting something that you want everyone else to, but actually the real strength lies in that sense of vulnerability.
And it should be, these conversations should be normal.
Yeah, absolutely.
The stigma around talking or, saying you don't feel great.
Yeah,
it is. It's huge, and it's that stops people from getting help and getting to a point of despair. Whereas if your social media bubble or your friendship group, if everyone is talking and if everyone is saying, I don't feel good because X, Y, Z, or having conversations should be normal.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? It's crazy, isn't it? Isn't it such a funny thing to say?
Yeah.
But it's so true.
Going to the pub and talking about the football, If you had a group of like 8 lads.
Definitely see you doing that, mate. Jesus.
Like a group of 8 lads going to the pub, watching the football, guarantee that 1 or 2 of them have got some problems.
Yeah.
And they probably, don't want to tell their mates that they're having the beers with. That should be normal.
Yeah.
You should be able to sit there and speak to these people and say, this is what's going on. Or, I'm struggling with whatever it be.
And maybe it's that fear of, being sort of like Debbie Downer or whatever, but...
Being judged.
Yeah, being judged, But then the other side of it is for that someone to say, yeah, me too. Like, I'm going through that, and
one of them does it, you'll guarantee that another one will.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a funny one. Like, it's something that, for me personally, I really sort of struggle with. I've shared this with you in the past. From the time I was about 21, I was seeing a counsellor regularly because I was just trying to work out how I thought because I was really struggling with some stuff. And the cafe's been going for 9 years, nearly 9 years, and what I feel as though we're in a season where things have never been better in many senses. Like when we do our bikes and beers, which is all about community, it's about people, it's just about opening a door and we're seeing all these friendships sort of start and people are going out riding and it's just amazing. And that the trickle down effect of that is massive and it's awesome. It's amazing to sort of be a part of it. And so everybody comes in with this, massive positive association. It's something that we are immensely proud of. And, again, using cycling as a vessel. But there are definitely times where I'm in here and I'm not feeling that positive.
And you've got to put a face on.
And there is a point where you do have to put a face. Now, thankfully, I do have some people I'm very close with here that if people ask, how are you? I can go, not great today, if I'm honest. And even recently, I've just been going through what's a challenging time. And it's difficult because, on the face of it, everything's great because of the work that we do. And the positive side of all the work that myself, Jamie, Danny, sort of James and the rest of the team put in. But man, like there are times when I'm just like, I don't want to be here, and that's not, as I say, me sort of being Debbie Downer, and it's not something that I'm it's just struggles. The struggles of running a business, the struggles of other stuff going on in your life.
Yeah,
and it is a difficult thing to be. Where you kind of serving behind the bar and you've got to put a smile on your face. And I'm not saying that to, so that everybody just doesn't expect me to sort of be a certain way. I'm just saying, like, on the outside, things can look great, but
you never know.
You never know. And it's just, I'm very thankful for the few people, friends, my wife, there are people that I really can talk to. And a big part of it, as you've shared with it, is just kind of understanding yourself and understanding how you tick. And I know that I kind of go through these ups and downs. And like, for example, last week, there was a couple of days where I was in an absolute hole. And I was like, what's the point? What's the point of this, of work, of this, blah, blah, blah. And Hannah, patiently listens. She's like, yeah, well, whatever you want to do, I'm right here behind you. But I know I'll get through that.
Yeah.
And a few days later, yeah, cool, I'm good. I'm back on an even keel. But it is just that journey of talking, letting it out.
I think there's also, so the thing I've kind of, one of the things that I've learned, only recently begun to understand is, I always felt like, even greater, so this goes way, way back. I've always chased like everything, whether it's been money, houses, cars, bikes, whatever it is.
Sure.
Always, working really, really hard to achieve happiness.
Yeah.
And
it's funny, isn't
and then realizing that that's utter bullshit.
Yeah.
And I would beat myself up regularly about not having achieved stuff.
Yes.
And not being happy all the time, and seeing other people who appeared to be happy all the time.
Yeah.
Can't say they probably weren't.
Yeah, exactly.
And understanding that those feelings can be fleeting.
Yeah.
And enjoy them while they're there.
Yeah.
But you're not going to live your life being constantly.
Yeah.
You're always going to face some kind of struggle. There's always something out there that you need to work around and think through. And I guess I've only really learned that recently, and just not every setback has to lead to a spiral.
And it's one of the, absolutely. And it's one of the reasons why I am just immensurably passionate about community and the power of community and the potential of community, because it's in those moments where you are going through struggles and you do doubt, because happiness isn't the goal.
No.
Like, that's, everyone says, to be happy. And there was a study that was done. I forget where I heard this, but there was a study that was done, and it was basically asking people in different earning brackets what would make them more happier. And they all said 3 times the amount of what they were earning.
Right.
As in, so not like, just 3 times more, but it worked out that if someone was earning, let's say, 20 grand, they would need 60 to be happy. If someone was earning 100 grand, they need 300 grand. If someone's earning $1 million, they need 3 million. And there's always like something around the corner. So it's like this happiness as a goal, as a pursuit, is it's not in what we gain, but it's just in that sort of inner sort of like drive.
Yeah.
But there will be struggles, there will be battles, and that the community aspect of it is so important, because it's just, I know there's times if I speak to my wife or I speak to a couple of sort of close friends, they can just say those right things that just remind you and just shift that focus back onto, that's right.
So you said something to me.
This is where I'm going.
Maybe, I can't remember if it was last week or the week before. And I had a recent bout of doubt, I call it, where I'm like, oh shit, I'm back where I was 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And you said to me, no, you're not. Look what you've done.
Very quickly, you're not. Yeah.
But I was there. I was like, these 4 years that have passed.
Yeah.
I'm right back there in my head. That's what I'm thinking, and I'm beginning to doubt everything that I've done.
Yeah.
And then you just said the right words, and I started thinking, actually, no, I have done this, and I have done that, and I'm going through, or I could be, who knows? I have got this period now of change, but there's also a lot of really positive stuff, and don't focus on those negative things that have happened in the last few months. They've happened, and there's nothing I can do about those now. But there's some really good stuff happening as well. Yeah,
and it's that kind of like confidence and assurance to know that, one, there's people around you that will say the right things at the right time. And there's the other side of it where, there's people around you that just help you to just, as friends, just kind of keep you up, just sort of steady the course. Just knowing that there are seasons, knowing that there are peaks and troughs. And sometimes those troughs, there's that age-old saying that bad things happen in threes. It's usually the truth. Like, one shit thing happens and you're like, oh man, that sucks. And then it's just this kind of like bout of it.
Yeah.
And then, those feelings of, negativity compound further and you just feel, and that's, in that moment, I could see you going, it just feels like it's all for nothing. And it's like, whoa.
Yeah.
No way. Like, it's like, this is a difficult time, of course. Process it, grieve, go through all of that, like embrace it, embrace that, sort of sadness. But it just, but I'm here as a friend, as in any other friend, just to kind of help remind and guide that you are on a journey and it is going to get better. And this storm will pass. And I think that's it. Like, and look, you look through like old teachings, you look through like old parables and from all sorts of religions or old books, there's always ups and downs, and all of them refer back to, and it resolves, like the storm will pass in some way or another, the storm will pass. And I think we can take a lot of encouragement from that.
I think it's one, I think I've got much better at communicating how I'm feeling. Yeah. And I now have people around me who, probably I know how to have a conversation with them.
Yeah,
I've been pretty terrible at that. I would say up until maybe back end of last year, and I've now, I don't have a big circle of friends, but there's a couple of people who I can have a proper conversation with. They ask me all the right questions.
Yeah.
They know how to ask those questions. They know how to, sometimes pull me up on stuff. As there can be encouragement, but every now and then, I can be a dick. And it's, rather than reacting in, I don't know, confrontational or aggressive way, they recognise what's going on with me and they know exactly what to say. And that just, it will calm me down and it will make me just open up and say, sorry, I did this because, and I'm far more self-aware now. And even, I know we're going to touch on it, but even going on the first aid course, I learned a lot about myself from that. It wasn't just about how to help people. It was, for me, the biggest takeaway was me learning how to talk to people when I need help. So, I mean, again, we're just getting back to conversations and how to have them.
And it's quite fun, isn't it? Like even through all the sort of journeys, and we'll be keen to talk about the jerseys that you released last year and that you've released this year or releasing this year. But it started with how great it is on a bike. It just through physical exertion, it can sort of break down barriers, and time. It can just break down barriers for open up potential for conversation. But it still comes back to that. The simplicity of conversation, and it's great that it's now spilling over into other areas, not just cycling. Let's talk about these jerseys that you released last year, because when I was still on social media, it was that when you released them, these jerseys were everywhere, mate. So let's talk about what the story behind the jerseys, the sort of where the proceeds of the jerseys were going to, and what the plans are for the next release.
So. If I go back a little bit further, the way that I would raise money for charities would be through doing, I don't know, like an endurance ride. So I rode across Europe, and then I did the Dolomites and various other things. And I would get myself in such a state physically and mentally that it was detrimental to what I was doing. So trying to raise all this money for mental health charities and ruining myself, I kind of realised that that's not a good idea.
Sure, not really sustainable.
So I was trying to look at another way of raising money. And I got approached by a friend who I was talking to about, I was like, I'd like to do a jersey. Would you give me, you're a designer, can you help? And he was like, yeah, sure. I'm going to get a friend of mine involved as well. It turned out to be an artist, and the artist is Carl Kopinski. And if you're into gaming or sci-fi or, a lot of his portrait stuff in cycling as well, people might be aware of him, Rouleur. He's a pretty big deal. And when Johnny said, I've got Carl involved, I was like, what? Actually, Carl Kopinski? And he was like, yeah, he wants to do it. So Carl... The three of us have all been through various different struggles, and we made quite a nice little team. We bounced a few ideas around, and I said, right, you guys get on with it. Just do whatever you feel is appropriate. I want to do a jersey. If I had my way, it would just be a black jersey with a logo on it. So I don't want to have anything to do with it. Like, I'll only stifle your creativity.
That's funny.
And they came back and they said, okay, well, we need a little bit of feedback, what you want it to represent. So I told them about the word respair. I told them I wanted it to be about a journey through sort of darkness to light. And they came up with this, the way that it worked. I kind of gave a very light brief, and Carl did a painting off it. And he showed me the sketch and then the painting, and I was like, shit the bed, this is amazing. Then Johnny transfers it onto a digital version, and then we send it off to get printed. And Ascend had started to gather a bit of a following, and all I had was this like PDF of the jersey, and I was like, I'm probably going to sell 30 or 40 to my mates, and we'll raise a bit of money. And I put the PDF out there, and all of a sudden, like 30 sold on within a week. And then even more, and it started to really grow. And then I got some samples done, shot those with Leon, and it just exploded. And we did men's jerseys, women's jerseys. The first round we sold like 400, and they went all over the world. So they went sort of Oslo, Copenhagen, LA, Melbourne, Malaysia, Singapore, Hong Kong,
amazing.
Peru.
Wow.
and they were going everywhere, and it was just like, this is mad. And we raised off that first round. I'm going to get pulled up on this by Ben. I can't remember if it was 10 or 12,000 pounds off the jerseys. And I didn't have to ride a single kilometre. It was great. And it was getting traction just everywhere.
So you raised 10 or 12,000 pounds out for what?
For the New Normal charity. So the New Normal was started by Ben May and his friend Jack. Initially, they set it up. It was the Good Grief Project.
Yeah.
So they would host peer-to-peer support groups. And then Ben and I talked, and he suggested doing like a men's peer-to-peer support group, which I thought was a brilliant idea. And I wanted to support it. So the jerseys went, all the proceeds from the jerseys went to that. I went through a few periods of ups and downs, and I've tried various therapists over the years and different resources. And actually, because of the pandemic, these peer-to-peer support groups were virtual. So they'd start at they were bi-weekly, 7:30 on a Tuesday evening. And it would be a virtual room of, it could be 10, it could be 20, it could be however many guys just talking about what's going on with them. And every now and then I'd be in one of these meetings and someone would say something and I'd be like, I should do that.
Yeah.
That's what's going on with me. I can relate to that.
Yeah.
And it was incredible that because you're not getting talked at or judged. Yeah. It's just a group of people talking. It was really easy just to listen and pick stuff up. So yeah, the proceeds from the jerseys went to the New Normal charity. We're running that again this year. So our second jersey has come out. I closed pre-orders on that last week, and it's gone really, really well again. And again, it's they're going all over the world.
Fantastic.
So that seems like a really good way of raising money for charity. If you can create a cool product or a cool brand, the people were buying these jerseys, and I'm sure there's probably a much more diplomatic way of putting this, but that's not something I'm very good at. Some people were just buying them because they're cool jerseys. Yeah. There's no. Yeah. They're not really worried about what Ascnd are doing. Yeah. They are not thinking that all this money is going to charity. They just want a cool jersey. I'm cool with that.
Yeah, I agree.
Knowing that the jersey is out there in whatever country, and that person has, helped the charity. That's amazing.
Yeah, and like going back to what I was saying earlier, I mean, even if it's 5%, 1% of people who bought that jersey,
got the message.
That's worth it. Yeah, that's absolutely worth it. And it's there's if people are buying it because there's hype, great. Because the work that's going on the back of it is really having a big impact. And the New Normal charity is great. I think Ben and his team there are doing unbelievable. So it's great that you guys are teamed up and supporting it. So obviously, sort of getting sort of to the what's happening next week or this week with regards to Mental Health Awareness Week. That's another part of what you're doing with Ascnd is you've been supported by Lucky Saint, which is a non-alcoholic beer company. But you approached me a couple of months ago and said, would I be interested in doing a mental health first aid course for the workplace? And I said, absolutely, yes. That sounds amazing on many levels. I'd never heard of one before. We've just done a round of first aid courses for, literally
physical
first aid. Yeah, physical first aid. But when you said, mental health first aid, it was like, yeah, I mean, as an experience as an employer, I've had, sort of to deal with staff that are really going through some very difficult times. And there's times where I can be an encouraging, kind of voice. And there's other times where I'm like, I feel a bit out of my depth here. So when you said, can we do it? I said, yes. So I signed me and Jamie up. So this podcast is released on Monday, and we'll be in day one of a 2-day course that is being run. And we're really excited about it. So why don't you just talk a little bit about how this idea came about for you to sort of, be rolling them out, what the course is?
So I mentioned it earlier when we first sat down 2 years ago and did the last podcast.
Yeah.
I've always wanted to be able to deliver some kind of mental health service. Yeah. And I've never known how.
Yeah.
I've never known what I could do. What do people actually need as well?
Yeah.
And
that's a good question. That's a very good question. What do people need?
Part of what Ascend is trying to do is signpost help and resources.
Yeah.
I found that when people would, I'd get people going into my messages on Instagram, and I really didn't, even though everything I've been through, you would have thought I'd understand a lot more than I do. But we're all different. And my go-to responses may not have been appropriate for everyone that messaged me.
Yeah.
And I looked into mental health first aid. And it's largely about communication, learning how to talk to someone when they approach you, learning how to spot the signs that someone is struggling, realizing that, mental health is a huge umbrella of issues, and learning what the differences are.
Yeah.
And I looked at the way that when you're out on the bike, and previously I was a tour guide, and people would talk to me and open up all the time, and I didn't really know how to talk to them. It was really, really challenging.
Cycling tour guide, not a London tour guide.
Yeah. God, yeah. So, and the conversations that you have on a bike.
Yeah.
I've run loads of rides and events and stuff, and because they're all sort of mental health focused, people would talk.
Yeah.
And then as soon as I found out about mental health first aid, I was kind of like, well, what if ride leaders, tour guides, club cyclists, cafe staff, cycling as a whole, what if we can flood that with first aiders?
Yeah.
If I can train 100 people this year, and then next year, they tell all their friends, we train even more. We put people in places who are equipped to help those around them. And we can make it normal. Like you talk about, if you say first aid, everyone just jumps to physical first aid. It's a pretty normal thing and everyone knows about it.
Yeah.
When I told people I was going on a mental health first aid course, they're like, what's that?
Yeah. I mean, I hadn't heard of it. And I was like, this sounds great.
Yeah. And it should be as normal.
Yeah.
And if we can get ride leaders, it doesn't really matter, anyone within the cycling community, I want to open it up to as many people as I can. So whether it's bike shops, cafes, clubs, teams, whoever, and just to make it normal. If we can signal that someone is a mental health first aider, and you're struggling, and you can approach that person, or you can signal that you need to talk, and that person's equipped to help you, and they can ask you the right questions, or if you're going to talk to them, they know how to respond. I just see it as a huge opportunity to impact a lot of people.
And it's great. I mean, from my standpoint, irrespective of the cycling community, from my standpoint as a owner of a small business, like we don't have an HR team. If a staff has a complaint, they come to me. You know what I mean? Or if a staff's going through a difficult time, it's on me. And we've definitely had to deal with some things. And there's been times where I've wrestled and I've struggled with where that boundary is. I mean, I used to do youth work, many years ago, and there was, lots of boundaries in place around safeguarding, because I was dealing with, sort of children who were 18 down to children who were like 11, you know, so safeguarding was a thing. But actually I was, you know, if a good friend of mine was going through a difficult time, for me, there'd be like no boundaries, as it were, you know, just be there as a friend and, you know, do whatever it takes. But I suddenly felt that actually, what's my boundaries here as an employer to an employee, you know, how I didn't know how close I could get, or not physically, but, you know, like emotionally, and it started to raise a lot of questions, you know, and a bigger company that would have this HR team, they could deal with it no problem. They'd be able to sort of point in the right direction. If they've got their stuff together, maybe they've got counsellors who work for them. I mean, who knows? But for me, as a small business that's got, you know, 10 employees, and I have had, you know, to deal with, you know, a few things over that time, it's like, well, Jesus, what do I do? What can I say?
I mean, one of the questions I've that's always, I've spoken to a lot of people who are in like the corporate environment, for example, and a lot of these companies do an awful lot of work for their staff, and they'll have incredible programs. Everything is in place. The staff won't use it.
Interesting.
They don't, you know, because there's a perception that going into that room to see whoever, I'm going to get judged. Whereas, you know, if that person were to go into a cafe, for example, or on a bike ride, and know that there is someone there who can help them, they're not going to judge them, can point them in the right direction, they can be a lot more relaxed around having these conversations, then, you know, the opportunity is huge.
Yeah, and, you know, I'm just, you know, putting myself in the position of somebody that's maybe kind of, you know, like working here or going to, you know, the cafe or something. Just having that reassurance that somebody is just saying, "You're okay," you know, and you know, and then you've always been very famous to say, "No, are you really okay?" But you know, I mean, not as simple as that. But it's that whole thing of just, you know, being, "Are you all right?" Which is great. So I mean, we're really excited about it. So I mean, maybe what are some of the things that we're going to cover this week?
So you'll look at a number of different topics that fall under the mental health umbrella, and you'll learn how to ask the right questions. You'll learn to ask, you know, and it's really easy to, I mean, I did it throughout the course. I mean, I found the course quite challenging because of my experiences. And learning, you know, how to ask someone the right way, not just "Are you okay?" and then following it up, but how to, when they turn around and say, "I'm not okay, this is what I'm going through." Spotting the signs, and being able to talk to that person without triggering them. You know, you might think you've done a great job as a friend or an employer, and that person then goes away and they're feeling worse about themselves. It's, you know, you kind of feel like you've done nothing wrong, and you know, you were trying to help that person. But actually that person's gone away feeling worse. And it's learning what are the right questions to ask, you know, and how to cope with someone who's struggling, whether it's, I don't know, body dysmorphia, whether it's anxiety, depression, suicide, ideation. It could be any host of topics, and it's just learning how to help them, really.
And communicate, point them in the right direction. I mean, it's something that Jamie and I are really looking forward to, and you know, I hope that to be able to roll out to other staff members as well.
Yeah, well, we're keen to. So the whole point of I guess, so setting the jerseys now, that the next stage for Ascend is to fund as many training courses as we can.
Right.
So this year we've already got 4 lined up, 16 people per course. The idea next year is that we run, you know, if not weekly, monthly courses that anyone can sign up for. And we'd encourage people to sign up for it. It's all funded by us.
I mean, that was one of the great things, you know, because it was not that I was concerned about it.
As an employer, it's like, how...
What's the cost?
Yeah.
And he was like, no, it's been sorted.
Yeah.
And that is, I mean, Nick, for you to sit here 2 years after our first podcast and be able to sit here and say that we are delivering a service that's going to benefit us for free, I mean, that's amazing, mate. I mean, talk about progression and progress. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's where can we actually have an impact, and what kind of help did I need?
Yeah.
Where could I find it? Not that I was, actually looking at the time.
Yeah.
But if we can train 100 or 1,000, or if we can deliver this in other countries as well, and just make it normal, people don't just recognise first aid as a physical thing, then that's the goal.
And ahead of Mental Health Awareness Week, if the work that you're doing, and as for this mental health first aid course, if that can help one person, or if that can reduce that suicide number by 1, it's very, very worthwhile. It's incredibly worthwhile, actually. It's amazing. Look, I think what you're doing is great, mate. We'll kind of start to wrap up the podcast there. Is there anything else you want to share before we finish up?
No, I think that's pretty much
cool, man. Well, it's nice. It's great to sort of like touch base with you 2 years on, and we'll continue to obviously first and foremost support what you're doing. And you and I have known each other for a long time now, and I think that I've certainly, I think from an outsider standpoint, seen you've been very open about your struggles, but I think also it's probably time for people to gather around and also, compliment on your successes as well. And I think that the work that you are doing with Ascend is having a really big impact. But also I think on a personal level, I've seen you at times really settle into it, and just build that confidence to say, I'm doing a good job. And I think that you are doing a good job, mate. And I think more people need to tell you that. And, I think that at times, obviously, you can be pretty hard on yourself.
Yep.
But who can't? And I think that, the work that you are doing, as I say, if it's just for one person, I believe that you would still do it, and, so keep doing what you're doing, mate. Keep fighting the good fight, because it is having a really big impact, mate. And from our standpoint, not only me, but also us as a business, it's, really, it's a real honor to kind of support you, because I think what you're doing is great. And, the fact that potentially through what this course that we're doing, this week, this mental health first aid course, the impact that could have is amazing through this one business. And there's lots of other businesses that you're doing it, but it started many years ago with you realizing the opportunity of the conversation that you can have on a bike.
Yep.
And look at where it's come, mate. So massive, kudos to you, pal, and cheers.
Thanks for all the continued support.
Always, mate. We'll catch up again on a podcast in a year.
Season 3.
In season 3, that's right. All right, thanks, mate.
Cheers, dude.